What is up, my friends? All right, we are in November and it is time for our staff's pick of our top 5 baits that we throw this time of the year. Things are changing, fish are definitely transitioning. So if you guys are ready to break down our favorite baits for November, let's do it. Welcome to the Hookup Tackle. The Hookup Tackle is the world's largest showcase of Megabass products, featuring baits and colors not found at any other dealer. The Hookup also offers a wide display of OSP, Evergreen, Deps, Lucky Craft, Jackal, and many more. The Hookup Tackle is owned and operated by family, is staffed by guides and verified tackle nerds who love helping anglers elevate their craft. If you're in the Phoenix area, we'd love to have you stop by our showroom and check out the wonderful world of Megabass and the Hookup for yourself. If you shop online, there are almost 10,000 SKUs of Megabass products alone, with hundreds of other companies and new products being added daily. So next time you're looking for that hard to find bait, that color your fish have never seen before, or maybe you just want to elevate your game, look at thehookuptackle.com. Welcome back, my friends. I am Ben with the Hookup Tackle, aka the Tackle Otaku on Instagram, being joined again by my buddy Jeffrey the King. We are the Hookup Tackle USA. So, Jeff, today we are breaking down our 5 favorite baits for November, and this is a tough one. We've literally been deliberating here amongst everybody because November is one of those months that, I mean, literally almost anything can work on any given day.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just that time of year. If you want to catch them shallow, you can. If you want to catch them deep, you can. So It's like, what do you do?
And there's so much variety too, as far as like big water versus pond, river versus lake. You know, we're in the Southwest versus somebody in the Northeast, right? So there are a lot of variables that go into this. So take this for what it's worth.
Yep.
You know, definitely, you know, hopefully you can learn something from our approach and what we do. But keep in mind, like on any given day, like I'm always an overkill guy.
I know you are.
When we go fishing.
I know you are.
But this is the hardest time of the year for me. I literally will have like 25 rods rigged up with different things. Trying to narrow it down to 5. Basically what it came down to is these are 5 things that are always tied on this time of the year. So, you know, every time I go in November, these 5 things are on. So they became our top 5.
That's it, yeah.
So boom. So let's dive into it. So first, let's talk about what fish should be experiencing this time of the year. November is really, for us out here in the West, this is really the main transition time. And a lot of you guys experienced it as early as end of September. You know, a lot of you guys went through that big fall transition last month in October. We were still kind of on our big feed. Now temps are finally starting to get to where things are starting to transition. And this is a time of the year where we talk about things in extremes. We find that fish move very shallow and they move very deep. So this is that time of the year where the fish kind of go like this, and you could literally catch them in inches of water, or you could catch them down in 40, 50 feet. And there's a lot of things that we're not going to talk about today that could be, you know, great things, especially when we're talking about those deeper fish, things like a jigging spoon, a drop shot, that could, you know, a jig even. But we find that those are things that we really start utilizing as the water gets colder and colder. We still find that November, even though things are starting to cool off, the fish still have a little bit of aggressiveness to them. So, you know, we're still staying in more of a reaction zone. So we're going to break it down today, Jeff. I think we should just go from top of the column to bottom.
There you go.
And go from there.
Make
so
it easy.
Let's do it. So one bait that I definitely cannot keep off my rod this time of the year in November is a square bill. So I love square bills. Jeff, I know you throw the square bill.
I love them
a lot.
They get bit.
So what is it about a square bill for you that you love?
Well, like we said earlier, this time of year the fish can be anywhere and everywhere. So with a square bill, I'm able to cover that shallow water column fairly quickly and get big bites too on it. So I'm able to tie on like an Evoke, like I was fishing the other day, and fish rock, trees, grass, and it comes through it really well, and you can find out where the fish are from there. And I just think the square bill is just a great way to cover a lot of water and catch a lot of fish.
Yeah, and I agree. So, you know, this is one of those baits that if you're fishing a pond, it's a great, you know, bait to fish from shore because it's going to stay high in the column. If you're fishing a big lake, this is the type of bait that you're going to basically work the banks, the back of the creek arms, this is the bait that I choose to really target those fish that are really shallow chasing bait, whether it be shad or perch or bluegill or whatever it is that you guys have in your waterway. So there's a few different ones that we'll utilize, and I'll break them down here really quick. But basically, just in case you guys aren't familiar with the squarebill, it's a shallow diving crankbait, right? It's a small little bodied crankbait. It's got the square lip, and the idea is that it's going to come through and it's going to deflect off cover, and you can bang it around rocks and wood. And every one comes through different things differently and creates a different vibration. So let me kind of break down my squarebill approach for you guys. So one of these two baits is pretty much always tied on. This is the Lucky Craft LC 1.5. This is the original, 1.5 squarebill out of Japan. They basically created this whole market. It's still one of the best ones out there. They're inexpensive. They're $6. There's lots of great colors. I choose this one because I'm a sucker for this specific color. I'm a sucker for crack, I'm a sucker for gunmetal shad, and I'm a sucker for chartreuse shad. So one of those three is almost always on this time of the year. They're just great fall colors. So I'm choosing either this or an Evoke most of the time. And the reason why I go to an Evoke over, say, maybe a flat-sided crankbait is the Evoke is probably, in my opinion, probably the best cover obstacle avoider of any of the crankbaits that I have. You're laughing, Jeff.
That was a hell of a description, but you're completely right. I was blown away when I was fishing it the other day. I literally saw a tree, I threw it in the middle of the tree, I'm like, gosh, I'm gonna snag it. And then it just came through it. I'm like, okay. That was so crazy. And I got next to a tree, I literally watched it bounce off, come up, and over it. And
yeah,
I'm like, wow.
It could almost come through wood like a weedless bait.
Yeah,
in essence,
really
right?
good.
So there are times where if I'm not fishing around wood, like let's say I know it's just grass, or I know it's just rock, and there's not going to be any wood. It's just one type of cover. Then that's where a lot of times I'll opt for more of a flat side, like a sonic side or a flat force. Sonic side from Megabass, flat force from Evergreen. These flat sides are great because they're probably the most lifelike shad imitation. You can fish them very fast, you can fish them very slow, but they're a thinner shaped bait, flat obviously. So they're gonna vibrate really hard, they're gonna be very lifelike, like an actual shad or a bait fish getting away. But because they're so tight, they don't necessarily bang off stuff quite as well as what we were talking about with the Evoke or the LC. So if I'm not sure what it's going to be, if it's gonna be rock, this 40 feet, and I might turn a corner, there's going to be a laydown like you were talking about, and maybe there's some grass and more wood. It's going to be a mix of cover. It's really hard to beat the Evoke or the LC for that. So that's usually why these are on, just because I can put one on and not have to worry about it. I can throw it into anything. As far as colors go, again, we talked about those Lucky Craft colors. I'm just a sucker for those colors. In the Evoke, I usually stay in either a shad color or a bluegill color if I'm fishing, a pond or a lake. Jeff fishes a lake where they're suckers for bluegills. Or this is also the time of the year where they love chartreuse. And I'm really not a bass scientist, so I don't really know I should be though.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, maybe I am a bass scientist.
You got the glasses.
Yeah. Okay, I'm a bass scientist, and they love chartreuse. There's the technical reason. I don't know why, but this time of the year, they really seem to transition hard to chartreuse, and it's not just a muddy water color. Even in clear water, they'll smoke it. Something to do with the light, the way the sun is lower in the horizon, just the way the shadows are. This color just triggers them. So, anything in a smaller squarebill, 1.2, 2.0, something like that, great for November. I know you guys will catch a lot of fish, whether it's small lakes or big lakes. So definitely give those a look. Squarebills, November, boom. Are we done?
I think so.
Oh, I guess they're not all shallow. All right, let's keep going. All right, so transitioning from shallow to deeper water now. You can't talk fall fishing without talking about a jerkbait. So, last month in October, we talked about our favorite jerkbaits to throw were more like louder, wider movement things like the Ito Shine or the Pointer 100. Now, as the water's starting to cool off, fish are still have some aggressiveness to them, but they're maybe not quite as aggressive. Now I want something that's a little bit more natural, a little slower moving. And this is when I start to transition to that Ito Vision 110 +1 or the +2. So this is now when I want the bait to move a little slower, I want longer pauses, and I want the bait to just get down into slightly deeper water. I don't want them to have to chase quite as far as I would throwing a regular Edovision 110, right? So these are almost always tied on, and this is assuming that I'm fishing a bigger body of water, right? Something that's got plenty of depth to it, to where those fish are maybe suspended in between shallow and deep, or maybe they're chilling deep, but they will come up and eat these guys. The +1 is a great one for getting down 9-10 feet. The +2 is a great one for getting down, you know, 13, 14, 15 feet as you work through it. Colors, I stay, you know, pretty natural. Matte shad or any of the matte finishes is a great time of the year for that. Again, because our water is usually a little bit darker, because that sun is on a lower horizon than it is during the summer. I also will stick with like natural patterns, so like a natural perch pattern, Ishido Wakasagi. This is almost always my starting point when I don't know what's happening. And again, just because it's kind of a natural all around, you know, finish that could be anything. It could be a shad, a minnow, a perch, a baby bass. It could, you know, literally do everything I need it to do, and it's got enough body to where they can see it. So again, I'm throwing this on 8-pound most of the time, 10-pound if I'm scared or nervous about it. But the lighter the line, the more movement I'm going to get out of this bait. And again, it's just a very light motion with the rod tip. I'm just tapping the slack on this. I don't want to pull it too hard or it's going to wash out, right? Just a very light, you know, tapping the slack. Sometimes I'll cast out and I'll wind it down a little bit just to get it some depth, and then I'll pause it, and then I'll go to my jerking motion. But the +1, the +2, you can't go wrong. If, you know, size is an issue, they have the +1 Junior now available. It'll still get down to that 8-foot zone, but it's going to give you a little bit shorter length. It's a 98 millimeter instead of a 110 millimeter. So you've got some, you know, new options in there. But this is a great time of the year to get them on this guy. Always, always on. Now, two little side notes on jerkbaits. If you guys are fishing really big water, if you're fishing, you know, Great Lakes, or even, you know, some of these lakes like the size that we're fishing, you know, 5,000 to 15,000 square foot lakes, but it's a really windy day, it's a really noisy day. You get out there and the wind's blowing, the waves are crashing, you just need a little bit more volume. The Pointer 100 DD is great this time of the year. This is a staple for me, November, December, January. This will keep me in a wider moving bait, but it will have a lot more sound to it. So any of the Pointer 100, right, you're just gonna get a lot more of that rattle. You're gonna get a lot more draw to them on those really noisy days. So if you guys are getting out there and it's just, you know, blowing like hell out there, try the Pointer 100 DD, because it will still get the depth for you, still get that 9-10 feet, but you get a lot more noise out of it. The other one that I throw a ton this time of the year that a lot of guys give up on is the Slender Pointer. Now, this for me goes hand in hand with my square bill. So when those fish are shallow and those fish are pushing bait, you know, up into the, on the bank, into the cockleburrs, into the bushes, in that shallow grass, a square bill, a chatterbait, something like that is just a great way to get them. But sometimes they get accustomed to seeing that, right? If you're not the only one out there throwing your square bill, sometimes you need something different to throw to those fish. The Slender Pointer is unbelievable this time of the year because it stays really high in the column. It lets you work it just like a jerkbait, but it will stay like 1 to 3 feet deep. So it's just under the surface. It's not going to get too deep and start snagging stuff. So again, I'm a sucker for chartreuse shads. It's usually my starting point. Ghost minnow if I need to switch up. But the 97 is usually my go-to. 112 if I really need the casting. But this little 97, this is kind of one of those baits that it's been out for a while. It never leaves my tackle box. Okay, so if you guys are looking for just an alternative for the shallow, that's a great one to be an alternative. So there you go. Jerkbait from shallow to deep. Gotta have them in November. That's number 2. All right, and then number 3, continuing to go lower in the water column. This was one that we were debating whether or not it should be this, which is what we decided on, the deep crank, or a deep spinnerbait. And honestly, I think you could do either here. So I think it's important this time of the year to probably have both and try them out in your home waters. But basically, we decided on the crankbait just because all of us have so much confidence in it, and this is probably one of the best windows of the year to catch an absolute giant. And I would guess there's probably been more giants caught on a crankbait than any other bait. I don't know. What do you think, Jeff? If you had one bait.
I don't know. Does a crankbait beat like a worm?
Maybe not. I mean,
just a plastic
they do
worm,
love a plastic worm,
you know what I mean?
right?
All the giants that were caught back in the day on just a regular plastic worm.
True. I guess if you went back through time before there was great crankbait technology.
Yeah, but I think nowadays,
maybe in the last decade or 2 decades, if we added them all up,
a deep crank probably beats it.
I think a deep crank is hard to beat.
It just gets bit by big ones.
So big fish love a crankbait. It allows you to pick apart zones anywhere from 15 to 25 foot. Those fish that are sitting on breaks, on ledges, on edges, on rock piles, deeper creek channel bends, all of those things, treetops, right? All those things are, easy to fish with the right crank. So again, these are always tied on for us this time of the year. I broke it down to our 3 favorites that we throw this time of the year. So the Big M 7.5 from Megabass, or you could throw a 10XD. Right? So 10XD is still an amazing bait. Most of us now throw the Big M 7.5 just because it's so much easier to throw. It gets the same depth, it just doesn't crank your arm off. We seem to get the same bites on it, so I'd rather have the ease, right? So it's a 2-ounce bait. It literally gets down into 25 feet, no problem even on heavier line, okay? The Blitz Max DR is the largest deep diving version from OSP. Again, it's a staple. This is going to be more my, bang around 15 feet. This is going to be more my bang around 25 feet. And then the Lucky Craft, the LC 5.0 XD, is more when I want something super loud, right? Super loud, super wide. And again, there are so many great deep diving crankbaits. So, if you are having luck on a Spro Little John DD, or some other deep diving crankbait, great, because there are days when maybe 19 out of 30 days this is the bait of choice, and then the other 11 out of 30 days it has to be a Little John DD or a 10XD or something with a different rattle or a different movement, right? There's not one crankbait that can solve it every single day, but this will get you on the right track, okay? And again, basically to break it down, if I'm just kind of running bank and I just need to grind some rocks or hit treetops, it's really tough to beat this guy, the OSP Blitz Max DR. Okay, it comes through everything well. It's relatively quiet. I keep it super simple, shad colors, right? I don't get over fancy with this thing, and I just kind of use this as my probing tool. If I know they're set off a break and I really need to get that bait down there, then I switch up to the Big M 7.5. Color-wise, shads are really where I start. Again, kind of the same thing we were talking about with the square bill. This is a great time to add chartreuse colors into your crankbait arsenal, whether it's a full chartreuse, a chartreuse in blue, a chartreuse shad, whatever the case may be. This is the time of the year where they really start keying in on that, especially down there in the deeper water. It just stands out to them, okay? So there you go, must-haves. You could throw this guy on 15 to 20 pound line, no problem, and it will get down there into the depths and you guys will be good. You can throw this guy on 12 or 14 pound and it'll get down there in that 15-foot range. And then same thing, you can throw this guy on 14, 15, 16, it'll get down in that 18 to 20-foot range. But notice how much louder that is than that, and most of that is hook sound, right? So, just different approaches based on water clarity and what the fish are telling you that they need. But you've got to have some kind of deep crank this time of the year. Those are our starting points, so hopefully that'll help you guys. All right, another must-have, and I'm excited to start talking about this. And this is something that, I'm kind of an A-Rig junkie. So I throw this a lot, probably way more than I should, but this is the time of the year that I really start talking about A-Rigs, because this is critical for me for that kind of late fall, early winter stage. The fish absolutely destroy it. So we'll spend a little bit of time talking about this. This can also be one of those baits or rigs that you can fish from the bank all the way out into deep water. And that's one of the things that I love about it, is the versatility. I could literally just burn it over the tops of brush and cover, or I could set up a little bit differently and throw it off a point or down a ditch or down a creek arm and let it sink down the bottom and really pick apart the bottom lane as well. So basically an A-Rig is just going to allow me to present the entire school of bait fish to the fish. And again, everything we've pretty much talked about up to this point is bait related and not really craw related. This is still, for me, really a critical time of the year where they're super keyed in on bait. Now, if you guys are living somewhere where they're not crushing bait and they're coughing up craws or that kind of stuff, then obviously, you know, make adjustments to that. Throw more craw-oriented things, craw patterns in the crankbaits, you know, craw patterns in, you know, a jig or a soft plastic. But even though they're super keyed in on craws, like we're just fishing smallmouth in the river and that's pretty much all they eat is craws, we're still jacking them on, you know, a buzz bait, a jerk bait, an A-Rig. They still will react to these things because a fish is always going to be opportunistic. It's just a matter of presenting it to them in a way where they can't help but react to it, right? These are the two A-Rig setups that I throw most of the time this year, so I'll run through them here really quick with you. So very simply, I keep it pretty simple, a 5-arm A-Rig with some blades on it, right? So I like the blades just to give me a little bit added extra flash. Depending on where I am, if I'm fishing Arizona, then this is the A-Rig that I use. It's an A-Rig that we have made in-house. We call it the Bacharach Rig, and there are different sizes. The reason that I like this one for where we are is we have it designed specifically with the bottom 2 wires the longest and the top 3 the shortest, because in Arizona we can only have 2 hooks, right? If we go over to California, they allow 3, so very simply we can just add a hook to the middle, but those top 2 are always going to be our teasers. If we're in Arizona, I like that third arm, that middle arm being shorter, so that could be a teaser. So, you know, most of the time, I'd say 99.9% of the time a fish eats an A-Rig, they're hitting it from the bottom coming up. So by having those longer arms on the bottom, it's just kind of forcing them to eat it. Now, if I am fishing a state where they don't care how many arms I'm using, then I'll go to just a traditional, like this is a Hogfarmer. Hogfarmer makes amazing A-Rigs. The ones we make in-house are amazing. The difference between an expensive A-Rig and a cheap A-Rig, and we could do a whole A-Rig breakdown. We should probably do that.
That'd
Jeff.
be great, dude.
But what you're paying for with a, you know, premium A-Rig is you're paying for the components, you're paying for the strength of the arms, but you're also paying for the build quality and how these things are put together. When you buy a cheap A-Rig like a Umbrella or something like that, right? All of these arms are basically just kind of laying in this head and they'll eventually just fly out, right? They're either attached by a rivet or they're just kind of laid in there. There's nothing really attaching them or anchoring them to the system, right? So with the Hogfarmer, all of these wires are wrapped inside the head around the swivel and there's wire going around them, right? So they've got an anchor point. The ones we have made in-house, all of these arms and wires are individually wrapped around each other, so they all have an anchor point. So you're just gonna get a lot more durability out of them, and you're not gonna be throwing arms off like crazy, right? So the Hogfarmer will have a longer arm in the middle versus the Bacharach Rig. So it sets up great when you can use 5 jig heads, right? Because then you've got all kinds of room to play with colors and sizes and that kind of stuff. So let's talk about baits and let's talk about colors so that you understand kind of our mindset to this. Now, you'll notice that this basically looks like the United Nations of colors, right? And that's basically kind of my way of describing how I want an A-Rig to look. The more United Nations of colors it is, the more success we get, the more bites we get. Now, you don't have to choose different colors. If you just want to pick a 5-pack of swim baits and put 5 white or 5 green or 5 black or whatever speaks to you, go for it. But I find that we get, especially if you live in a state where you can only have so many hooks, right? So like we can only have 2, if you can only have 3, whatever the case may be. I find that by making it like this, they really key to the colors that are on the hook. So for instance, if I know they're feeding on white, like white's the ticket, I want my white on the hook, and I'm going to use my other 3 teasers to basically just be attractors to them. Okay, they're just something there, right? This doesn't look like any minnow, but there's something there, just a little color, a little bit of flash to them that causes them to look and they're like, oh, there's that white, and then they eat the white, right? Same thing over here. Even though these are all similar shades, I like to mix up the color tone instead of going all just solid white. Maybe I'll mix in like a clear blue, or a brown or a gray, or something that's got some black in it. Just something a little bit different to break up the monotony of it being all the same. I find that I have a lot more success with it doing it that way. So if you guys are just starting out, I would recommend definitely getting a few different colors and mixing and matching until you find your kind of sweet spot. Now, the other thing to note is that it's very important to have the same bait on here. Okay, so I don't care what bait you choose. You want to choose, a K-Tech, you want to choose a Spark Shad, you want to choose a Dolive Shad. Knock yourself out. Do whatever works for you. But it's really important that whatever bait you choose, you do the same bait all the way around, because every swim bait is going to swim at a different speed. Every swim bait is going to have a different sweet spot. Some, when you go slow, they're going to have a really nice tail kick, right? Some, when you go slow, they don't do anything. They just kind of push through the water. Some, when you go really fast, they vibrate really hard. Some, when you go really fast, they roll to the side, right? So by choosing a bait and going all the way around, all of the baits are going to be moving the same way a school of bait fish would be moving, right? So whether it's Dolive Shads, Spark Shads, K-Techs, whatever, just go all the way around with it. So for this time of the year, the two baits that are pretty much 99.9% of the time that I use, the Dolive Shad is usually my starting point anymore. So typically I'll use the 4-inch size on my hooks, and then the 3.5-inch size I'll use as teasers. Now, you're gonna kind of match the hatch here. So, we're fishing mostly fish that are feeding on shad. So this is just a really easy, it mimics a threadfin shad almost perfectly. If you guys are catching them on gizzard shad or bluegill or bigger things, then maybe go to the 4.5-inch size or even the 6-inch size might be a better option for you. But generally speaking, on the hooks, I'm going with something that I know they're gonna like. And it's usually either like a white or an electric shad, neon wakasagi, something like that. And then I always mix in some kind of teaser color, whether it's chartreuse, blue, just something that gives a little bit of pop just to draw attention to them. The other bait that I use a lot this time of the year is the Megabass Spark Shad. Now, what I love about the Spark Shad is the Spark Shad is going to be the slowest moving of the bait. So if this is an A-Rig that I want to throw on the bottom and really kind of slowly drag it around, nothing beats the Spark Shad. At a very slow retrieve, the bait has a really nice natural side-to-side movement, and the tail just very subtly moves. It's not a great bait for working really fast. So if you're just kind of running the shore and kind of moving it really quick, then the Dolive Shad is going to be a better option for you, even the K-Tech Fat Swing Impact. But if you're throwing it out over structure and you're working this thing really slow and really just getting that A-Rig to kind of swim through and drag along the bottom, the Spark Shad is the best. So if I know I'm going to the bottom, I'm throwing Spark Shads. If I'm not sure if I'm going to the bottom, or I might be on the bottom and then I might be high in the column, I might be kind of all over the place, then I go to the Dolive Shads because it's going to give me kind of an in-between versatility. If I know I'm just going to be fishing super fast and really high, then I'll go to the K-Tech because I can fish it really quick, move it around, and that kind of gives me my 1, 2, 3 punch. Now, as far as retrieves go with this, you're gonna have to experiment. A lot of times they eat it just on a straight retrieve, okay? So cast it out, let it sink down wherever you want it, and then just a slow, steady retrieve. If you're not getting bit, just like what we talked about with the spinner baits, right? And burning a spinner bait, that sometimes, you're burning it, you just stop every once in a while, and it causes those blades to clack. Same thing with an A-Rig. Sometimes you're swimming it through and I just give it a really hard turn of the handle, and those baits will just they'll pulse, right? And it'll look just like a school of bait that's moving around. It kind of pulses and moves. The same thing can happen with an A-Rig. So you can jerk it. Really, all I did just give it a hard turn, right? I'll wind, 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 give it a hard turn every once in a while. And then they're just kind of swimming, and then it pulses. And a lot of times you'll get followers that when it pulses, all of a sudden, it'll trigger the bite, and you got them. So, definitely give it a shot. If you guys are fishing ponds, just lighten up the rigs. lighten up the jig heads for you, okay? So like in a lake, typically 1/4 or 3/8 on the bottom, and then either no weight on the top or like 1/16 on the top. That will give me a lot of versatility. If I'm doing ponds, I'm probably doing 3/16 or 1/8 on the bottom, and then probably nothing on the top, just to keep it really light so I can control the depth. But give it a shot. This is such a fun way to catch them. Once you guys start jacking them on this, it gets so addicting. I think you'll love it. Definitely always on my rods in November. All right, and then finally for me in November, I had to choose something, to slow down and to fish the bottom, because sometimes they just get keyed on craws, or they get, really specific to structure and they don't want to chase something down. So this is the time of the year that I always have a free rig or a Texas rig tied on, and my go-to is always the OSP Dolive Beaver. So this is just an amazing bait. We talk about it a lot here. The OSP Dolive Beaver is just one of those baits. It's a perfect crawfish imitation. In my opinion, probably the most perfect crawfish imitation as far as movement goes, but it just looks alive. It looks lifelike. So it could be great when fishing in places where they feed on bluegill, when they feed on shad. You can just adjust your, colors, right? I've smoked them in the Great Lakes on them when they're feeding on gobies, right? You can just kind of mix and match your color tones until it looks right. But basically the Dolive Beaver has this like crazy kind of claw and a special segment in the head. So as this bait is being pulled down, it's going to have this really abrupt swimming motion, and they call it a dolphin kick. So it literally is down there kind of flapping the same way a crawdad would be kind of scurrying away from you. It has that movement. And then when the weight stops pulling it, when the weight lands in the bottom and it separates, the bait turns horizontal and then falls like a Senko would fall. So you get kind of this 2-in-1 movement with this bait that really no other bait I know of can do. They have caught fish for me basically everywhere I've thrown them. Smallmouth, largemouth, so wherever you guys are in the country or in the world, they will smoke a Dolive Beaver. 3.5-inch size is usually where I am here, because again, I'm really looking at this as more of a free rig, more of a structure type approach now versus a flip approach. But if you guys are living somewhere where there's tules or grass and it's more of a flip, then you might want to go to a 4-inch just to give yourself a little bit more body. You could also go down to the 3-inch and put it on a Ned head or something like that. I just don't really do that much. I pretty much live on the 3.5-inch size. So again, I keep my colors simple. You can never go wrong with a green pumpkin or green pumpkin chartreuse, something like that. If you guys live in places where the water's really dark, you might go to a black or some type of color there. If you guys are in the Great Lakes, they smoke the ghost shrimp or dark cinnamon blue flake, something that's got some blue flake and some light kind of sandy or cinnamon color. But again, 1/4 ounce or 3/8 ounce weight on a free rig, Dolive Beaver. I know I can just go anywhere and jack them, so definitely add this to your arsenal if it's not already there for November. You guys will get them. All right, guys, well, that is a wrap. There are my our staff's 5 favorite baits for November. So hopefully that was insightful. Hopefully that will give you a starting point if you're just, sometimes this can be a really difficult month to catch them because things transition. You just kind of find yourself going, I don't know what's happening, right? So if you're finding yourself that way, maybe start with one of these baits that we talked about and go from there. If you have questions on anything we covered, definitely drop it down below in the comments and I will get to it. Jeff will leave links to the products, and I look forward to hearing how the November adventures go. So until next time, guys, thank you for the support. Thank you for your business, and we will see you very soon. Good, Jeff?
Oh, yeah. Let's go fishing now.
All right. Peace out, my friends.